because some of the things you do, some of the things the mayor does, they're not right.
Thank you for watching another Morristown Matters video. This is another episode on the January 9th Hamblen County Committee meeting, where we talk about noise ordinance. All the citizens seem to be in favor, one way or another, of having a noise ordinance. The question is how restrictive do they make it? As you will hear by a commenter, this is an identical noise ordinance as the city of Morristown currently has. You will be restricted on animals, on instruments, on listening to your radio outdoors, on what time hours you can work on your car or your house, what if you whether or not you can shoot your firearm. This has a lot of different things, and this is just going to be the first stepping stone into being more restrictive, just like the city of Morristown.
Good evening, everyone. We will start our January the 9th committee meetings of the Hamblen County Legislative Body. Public Service Committee, Chairman Richardson.
Okay. Any visitors wishing to address the committee on agenda items tonight?
If I could turn your attention to item 4E, the noise resolution. I am aware this is mainly for discussion, but if I could turn your attention to specifically page 112 of your packet, Part D on pets for prohibited noises. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this or not, but this is copied and pasted exactly from the city's prohibited ordinances. Go on Muni Code, look it up, it's right there, copied and pasted, exact same thing. As you can tell from my shirt, obviously I'm here because I have poultry. I live in the county outside of the city limits because I want to be able to have my birds. It specifically mentions the keeping of birds and fowl. Roosters crow. I mean, if people have an issue with roosters crowing, they need to take that up with the Lord, not me. I didn't make them crow. That's just the way they were designed to do. I don't have a whole lot of birds, but I'm not giving up my chickens. That's just, I mean, I've had birds pretty much since I've grown up. I've raised show birds for over 15 years. And unfortunately, many of the other people in Hamblen County that also raise show birds, because if you're not aware, there is a large poultry show in Knoxville at the Chilhowie Park. Last year they hosted the, I believe it was the year before last, they hosted the national meet. So there are a lot of us here that do participate in this, and it goes into a lot of money. And if you haven't been to the grocery store lately and seen the price of eggs, I don't advise anybody to be giving up chickens right about now. And another thing that I'm concerned about with this is because a lot of us, I know there are some particular issues in the county with a lot of certain neighborhoods having some severe noise issues, especially at night. But this is so restrictive. You're punishing the ones of us that are minding our own business. Like, how are you going to silence chickens? And particularly with dogs, I'm having issues repeatedly with people letting their dogs run loose in the neighborhood. Don't worry, I've called animal control on that several times, but when the people won't open the door, there's nothing they can do about it. And we have this issue continually. You've got a dog running loose, that gets everybody's dog stirred up. That just happens. Coyotes come through, same thing. You got somebody with cattle, mules, horses. We can't control the animals make noise. I mean, that's just how it is. But we shouldn't be punished for that because we live outside of the city limits so we can have those animals. And further, with this noise ordinance, where does that stand on fireworks for the 4th? I know there's a lot of people that don't like it, but a few of us like to, shoot some bottle rockets and stuff on occasion. And what also I'd like to know is with the decibel level, I know at least one of you in here has that on your phone. And right now, we are exceeding the decimal level that you have at least listed on there temporarily. I mean, right now we're exceeding the decimal level. Plus, who are you going to get to monitor it? Are you going to have the sheriff's office go out to every single noise complaint? Because I'm pretty sure these fellas have better stuff to do than to go over to somebody's house over a rooster, or a dog, or a horse, or anything like that. or fireworks, stuff like that. There's got to be some reason with this, because nobody like me or many of my friends who also have birds, I mean, I can't keep the ducks from quacking. They don't do it all the time, but when you feed them, they certainly do. When somebody pulls up in the yard, the dog's gonna bark. That happens. But when we have in there the word keeping, birds and fowl, and then making those noises, that's completely irrational to try to prohibit that. And further, what are you guys gonna do about, because if you go all the way to the bottom, there's like a time frame for firing weapons and whatnot. What about the people that go out coon hunting? I don't particularly partake in that, but what about them? I mean, there's a lot of aspects that we need to be considering about this. A lot. And, I mean, there's a lot of us that have expressed that we live outside the city limits for a reason. And my little girl shows these birds. I have over 20 trophies myself. And it just deeply disturbs me that it might come down to a noise ordinance restricting poultry. And for that, I strongly urge you to take that part, at least, out of the noise ordinance when you're considering it. Thank you.
Thank you for comments. Any other comments at this time on agenda items?
Thank the mayor for even writing a noise ordinance, and also the commission for following up on it.
Name and address, please.
Got some copies if I could pass them around to people. Now, I didn't make a copy of the draft. I figured Barrett's got that already. These are some things that, from the exemption section, that you may want to just consider and all that. But, you know, for the county, wouldn't want to stop the county, sponsored events from happening in there. I just didn't see anything in there. And I trust the county from not disturbing, making a lot of noise. So that's what the number one you would see on there. It says, if they have a parade from the county sponsored or charity event that they're doing, that basically they're allowed to have it. And also any activity or duration, it'll follow along that they can get a special permit for, even though it might violate certain things. Like since we all know a couple of years ago, the churches, they would allow a lot of gatherings, so people were out in front of the church in the cars, and that's how they're handling services. I wouldn't want to block that. And that's what the number 3 would be for. And you can see I got a section in here for like temporary permits. From people can get temporary permits if they want things, like neighborhood watch program. If they want a gathering in their neighborhood, they can get do that, or a block party, or the neighborhood night out against crime. I've seen those things happen in neighborhoods, so I want them to be able to still have the ability to still have things, even though it might violate certain things in there. And I just got pretty conditions that when they issue a permit, that they can actually go and look it over and follow through, like how far it is from a residential area, which they're using a amplification device, how they're facing and stuff. So that's just something y'all to consider things. And also, I didn't see a section there for penalties, so, I mean, whatever I can make suggestions, but I'd rather you guys do it. And that's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to address this time?
Yes, my name is John. My property abuts the event center. So from my lawn, I reach through the fence and touch their property. And my home, the back of my home, my deck faces the back door of the event center. and I have over 100 recordings of decimal levels above 100 decibels from the deck of my house. So we definitely need a noise ordinance for an event center that was placed in an area where there is no barrier between the residents of Sweetbriar, who have been there long before the event center was ever given permission to operate. And as many of you know, they operated as an event center long before you actually even gave them permission. And so my home is not a quiet place once the summer starts. We definitely need a noise ordinance. We need specific guidelines as to fines for going over the noise level. You know, if we can use an iPhone, my understanding is the app on the iPhone is 1% off as far as a decimal level. So if any of your law enforcement people would come and put the app on their iPhone and see that it's 100 decibels, that range might be 99, it might be 101. But I doubt that you'll ever find where it's 50 or 60. 50 or 60 is about the road traffic from 11E back to the house. So if you have a heavy load during early morning or later in the night where people are going home, you may hit the 50 to 60 level, but you certainly shouldn't hit 100 decibels. And so I'm in favor of a noise ordinance as soon as possible because the season's about to begin. I know a number of my neighbors that live on the same side. The way the houses are designed, the bedrooms are in the back, and their children are kept up at night, some of them to tears. There's some senior citizens. I happen to be one of them, and we don't stay up all night, and we've been kept out, and we've even had people had to go to a hotel because they couldn't stand the boom boom any longer. So I'd appreciate a noise ordinance as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I could speak for much longer than 5 minutes on this topic. We moved when I was 22 weeks pregnant with our only child to our house, and we lived just off of, just in Brandy's Place behind Molly, just about 2 miles away before we lived here, where we live now. From the moment we moved in, we've had issues with a neighbor who comes and goes at all hours of the night, leaves 3 dogs tied outside her house, and they bark constantly. We have hundreds and hundreds of videos. We've had police come to our house. They've told us there's nothing that they can do because there is no noise ordinance. We will turn music on in our backyard so that we can hear that instead of dogs barking. We have a 4-year-old now. This has been going on for 4 full years. And I just want to speak to what kind of duress that puts you under. We bought the house that we thought was going to be the home for our family forever. And I worked for Hamblen County Schools for 11 years before I just moved a few years ago to Greenville in the hopes that maybe eventually we could relocate our family because of this issue. I'm all for poultry and keeping of animals, but I believe that we're going to have some really strict rules about how that's enforced when it comes to pets and versus poultry, perhaps cattle. My father-in-law owns over 40 head of cattle. I'm no stranger to the things that come along with that. But when it comes to our neighbor who chooses to come home at 3 o'clock in the morning and leave her dogs tied out so that they will bark continuously for her to let them off the tie out, and then to be told that there's nothing that we can do about that while it's waking up my child repeatedly. I just urge you to consider the mental toll and the loss of property that people like us experience to the point of uprooting our lives because of some dogs. And by the way, we have dogs and cats. We're animal people, but our dogs don't do that. So Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, I'm for the ordinance, especially when it's noisy and there's a lot of racket. But what I want to know is, we've got laws right now, it's on the books. It's been on the books ever since I've been a kid. They ain't never been enforced. So why make laws if you ain't going to enforce them? Why make new laws if you ain't even going to enforce the old laws? It don't make sense. It doesn't. I don't know. Only God knows.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else?
For the noise ordinance, but I want you to think about common sense too. We have power outage. I'm going to fire my generator off. I run it. You know, I don't fool around. My wife has breathing problems. I don't care if it's in the afternoon or if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I want the right still to be able to use common sense and take care of myself. I'm too old to live without electric and the comforts that it provides. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, if not, we'll continue on. Okay, item 4E, Mayor, noise resolution draft.
Yes, this is, in your packet is just a draft. It's to get things started as far as the discussion goes. During the process of preparing this, I reviewed about 15 different noise ordinances, and they were from cities. And many of them had the same verbiage in it. It led me to believe that there was kind of a template used by MTAS, the Municipal Technical Assistance Service, the consultants from UT for city governments. And so a lot of this models those policies that currently exist. Now, there are a few items in here that I really wanted you to look at, and I'm not asking you to adopt anything. This is just to get the conversation started. Like on page 1 under B, radios and phonographs, the time, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Is that what you want? And that's for during those times if there was loud noises generated by radios, phonographs, so forth, during that time period, that'd be a violation. Yelling and shouting, same thing. Mostly, I would say that would be a domestic issue. Law enforcement's probably already there anyway. So, again, between 11 and 7. You have the pet issue that's been brought up. I think we have regulations already on the books as far as for consistent dogs. Now it's like a barking. I think we have a barking dog resolution that was adopted probably 15 years ago or longer. And so I'll research that to make sure what that says. And I'm thinking that's from 11 to 7. In G, under building operations, what I caught there is that it wasn't, I guess, the loud noises, let's say, or any violation could happen on weekends. And I marked through that because, that's when people do their home improvement jobs, is on weekends lots of times. And so, and they do it, and in this sample, anytime after 6 o'clock was a violation. I extended that to 8 o'clock. Could we, and then I struck on weekdays, And it would be all week long, it'd be available up to 8 o'clock. So think about that, look at that as far as, you know, folks working at their home, on whether it be a home business or in their garages or whatever. Let's see, in H, I marked through hospitals because we don't have any hospitals in the county, and we'll never, because we don't have sewer service, and you're going to have sewer service to have a hospital. So I struck that. And then on page 2, where it talks about sound levels from property, something we need to give a good consideration on is the decibel levels. You know, what is excess? What is excessive? And so is 50 excessive, or 60 or 65? Those were in some of the other ordinances, city ordinances, but those are cities, and so is that what we want to do? And we need to look at that very closely. And then as far as making sure that we use the right device to measure the decibel level. And so in some of the ordinances, sample ordinances, they were very specific about the device. And I was not as specific in this. So that would be something that we would look at. And then at the end, in G, I just noticed in looking through these that nothing was said about guns or gunshots and target practicing, or, I mean, I can hear from my house around John Hay School, the gun club doing their skeet shooting. You know, is that a violation? You know, so we just need to give some thought to that. In this, it would be an exception. Person hunting on private property or participating in events at a permitted and zoned gun club or practice range. So, and then there may be other noises that are some that you have concerns about. Another one I had that I caught was about agriculture. And if you look at under exceptions D, it has agricultural equipment. And that's between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. It's exempted.
Where was that one?
On page 2, at the bottom of page 2, under exceptions.
3D.
3D.
Page 3.
Okay.
Mayor, this being a suggestion, I think Chairman Richardson has some ideas, but we can take this as suggestions and work from this.
Correct.
I agree with the gentleman that spoke earlier that we need to proceed with good common sense. The gun club, for example, has operated for years. You know, we don't need to touch that. That's just my thought, but Chairman Richardson, won't you enlighten us?
So I spoke with Charles Curtis today, and he is the chairman of the County Commissioners Association, and he actually is the one that wrote the next document that we're going to look at, and he indicated that this week, by the end of this week, he should have some new information that would help us in this process. He said this is the hardest ordinance, whatever you want to call it, to try to contain and make fair for everybody. But he assured me that he would have that information and get it to us hopefully by the end of this week. So, and it might shed some new light on the subject. Part of it had to do with the decibel ratings. Part of it had to do with how do you calibrate, how do you have somebody trained, is there another way to bypass all that and, you know, take care of it with other means other than an ordinance or something. So he was going to get all that information to us as soon as he could.
And in your considerations, as we go through this process, think about enforcement too. because enforcement will be difficult unless we're very specific.
That was one of the things that he was talking about, was how do you enforce this? And part of this document, the new authority for counties to regulate nuisance, that has something to do with the enforcement and regulations.
So in other words, Chairman, that we could use a nuisance,
Correct.
some way to specifically address.
It could be classified as a nuisance and kind of bypass everything and then go to enforcement, law enforcement at that point.
I mean, we've got car club guys, that drive their cars in parades and such. You know what I'm saying? We just enacting something that's encompassing of our county could include some folks that are unintentional.
Right, unintended consequences.
Chairman, yeah, I have a question, please. May I ask the gentleman that has the problem and behind his house deck, is it through the week that you have those problems when the season, or is it just the weekend?
It's mostly on the weekend, but it can be during the week. We also not only have the event center, the Red Barn, we also have the Spook House.
Yeah.
And they have events during the week. They set off some kind of flame. You could actually hear the flame each time it's set off, from that property. But that's, my understanding, is in the city and not in the county. So, but they, by the time you get people out of the parking lot, and out of the event, it's way after, 11 o'clock.
Well, I do know that several councilmen have been in your area and listened. We really are trying to fix this. Just like the chairman said, it's so encompassing. We want to do the right thing. We really do. And I appreciate the gentleman who brought these, passed out the exemptions. And it makes you think, because it may not affect me. I live in the city. I don't have these, so I don't think much about it. But this has really opened my eyes, because we tend to not maybe take on things that doesn't bother me. So I really appreciate, and we really are working towards to help everybody. We really are. Thank you so much for what you've given us.
Couple of questions. Is that property in the urban growth boundary?
No, but part of it is the parking area. About halfway up the hill toward the Red Barn is in urban growth. In the plan and the map that's being proposed for the changes, it takes in the whole property.
Takes in all that. The other thing that bothers me when you look at this page here, it says a long line of Tennessee Supreme Court cases has held that the counties have no authority.
That's why the statute was changed in 2004 in the county powers, which gives counties now the authority, which they didn't have before, counties with zoning, which we have, to like implement noise ordinances or camper-related things like we're talking about.
I just want us to be real careful that we present something that we can have some teeth to it and back it up,
Yeah, well, when I was talking to somebody from the city, he said, if you do not have some kind of penalty, then you're going bark, 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 bark,
Yeah.
you need a bite. And if I have to call the sheriff's department, the first time, okay, a warning, but if I have to call them the second time, I need some teeth in this thing. I need it to hurt. Because, all we're doing is quit that, and we need something that says, no, you write the check. And by golly, when the sheriff stops you from speeding, it just takes him a few minutes to write that ticket. And we need some teeth into these problems. And the other thing, I had a constituent call me
what do you do about people who have a private shooting range themselves? By golly, that's on their land, and they made it, and I have hens. I admire you for having roosters. I won't have it, but you know, and when it's time to get your crop in, your equipment's going to run with those lights.
Yeah.
And I think if everybody has all of that in an understanding, but when it becomes chronic, like the Red Barn, now we need some bite. And so, sooner than later, right?
Our biggest problem is how, about having a bite is a $50 limit on fines.
Oh dear, okay.
Because of the right to a jury trial. If it's a civil, even if it's a civil matter, you would still have a right to a jury trial. But, you know, court costs are a whole lot more than the fines.
Okay.
As it's turned out in a lot of cases. And it's $50 per day if someone's in violation of, for example, our property maintenance ordinance. Every day that they're in violation, it's another offense. And so if someone is continually keeping this noise going,
yeah,
that could be $50 for each 24-hour period that this is occurring. So the $50 does keep you from biting too hard.
Is there any way to change the 50?
$50 is constitutional.
Yeah.
Smack. Actually, 25.
So it would have to go to a jury trial to be above that?
Yes, sir. A person would have a right to have a jury trial. And we don't want to spend our time with all of that.
Well, my one concern about that is a situation that was brought up in the planning commission about the gentleman who added on the structure, and it went to court under Judge Snyder, and long story short, it's 1,870 days that it's not been where he's not complied, which totals $93,500, and he's still not complied. So $50, I don't think is going to be sharp enough to deter somebody that's making, don't know what they charge, but $1,000.
I'm curious, are you talking about the Don Johnson?
The one that was a store, we thought they, yeah, Ron Boots.
Well, now, if you have to, oh, yes, sir.
I would just like to say, in reference to the Red Barn, and I'd say a number of people are here because of the Red Barn. We really can't get justice or a fine from a barn that is guarded by county employees. If the sheriff department and the justice and the jail employees are in essence involved with the Red Barn, we've called several times, and what I've seen and what I've noticed firsthand is I drove over there to ask them during the day, please turn it down. It's rattling the windows on my house. And I saw two gentlemen with guns on their hips. Yes, Tennessee is an open carry, but I found out that two of those gentlemen work for the jail. So when the sheriff's department comes, and we admire our jailers, that's a tough job. You're not being overpaid, and I appreciate that we have jailers. But they're guarding the Red Barn, so when the noise comes, hey, how you doing? They're good. How's the kids? Boom, and that's it. They'll turn it down. And as soon as they leave, it's gone. So that's an immediate conflict right there of having county employees involved with that event center, especially the history of that building itself and the litigation that the county has been involved with the gentleman that owns that property. If you'll check your notes, you'll find out when the last time he was here. He said, I've been operating that place as an event center for years. Well, in his court case, that's not what he said. So we can't expect the owner to be honest with us, and we can't expect county employees to be involved in oversight of that facility. And I think you ought to consider not having county employees at that facility. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
agree with Mr. Lowry on the county employee business. These guys, I've been in the neighborhood, and these guys try to help the situation. I mean, they come up into the neighborhood and try to help the situation. So I respectfully disagree with you. And we can't limit what our employees do on their time off like that. So, but again, what's before you is a starting point. You know, send me your suggestions. We'll bring another draft next month, and we'll come to.
Could we leave this, Chairman Richardson, as you get that information from Mr. Curtis, maybe send it out to us or something, and however you'd like to proceed from your committee to handle this.
We'll do that. And I would also like to say that, you know, we review this, we take what we have from Mr. Curtis, we come back in February and kind of finalize this so we get some closure to this if possible. It's been going on for some time.
Is there, I'm sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
Chairman, if I might, just a minute. I want to touch base with this with Sheriff Mullins. I believe what has been seen is an off-duty jailer working as a security person, not as protecting the Red Barn as much as a security officer to, like a bouncer, per se.
100% correct, and the weapon he may have been carrying is his own personal weapon. It is not county property or county issue.
So he's not acting as a county employee, he's acting as basically a subcontractor on his own time.
Right.
That's no different than working any other event.
Do you have a policy for that? I mean,
We're going to review the policy.
okay.
Question. As I understand, then, we're going to work on this together. It does need to be tweaked, and I agree with Miss Peggy. I'm not a member of your committee, and that's fine. But it does need to be to the point that you can do something about it. I feel sorry for these folks. I live in the country, and thank God I've got good neighbors. I don't have to worry about this. But I can't imagine your child or your grandchild not being able to sleep. I can't imagine, the gentleman was talking about he's older. Some of us are too, honey. But let me assure you, there's no call for this. Citizens do not deserve this. And that's what we're here for, is to respond to them. That's what they put us in for. So we need to be doing our jobs.
I'm curious, can we start and start from the top down maybe, and everything doesn't have to be done at one time? I mean, that document may take months to complete.
That's the question I was going to ask, is there a way for us, because there's a lot here to address. I don't think you can address all this February meeting. You can't come up with that.
That's a good point.
If there's a way to do it, maybe address businesses first. As far as that, is that? That's what you want, sure. I mean, I just don't know if we could, you know.
Mr. Curtis did say that this would be the hardest thing for us to put our arms around because of it. There's so many variables and it touches so many people.
Mr. Chairman, like this gentleman said, we're going to have to at least keep it an open mind, keep it simple. If we get multiple calls of barking dogs, when our officers and myself, when I was working the streets, get there, the dog's not barking. Cows mooing, could be a coyote coming through. We don't need to push it. It's going to be very hard to enforce. And it's going to make repeat calls coming in right after another. As soon as we leave, because the dog's not barking, it starts barking and we're coming right back. It's going to be tough to enforce all this. Now, the Red Barn, I understand it's something that needs to be done, but a lot of this other stuff's going to be tough.
And again, common sense.
Mr. Chairman, too, you know, whatever we do, it affects the whole county, not just one area or one, so it will affect the whole county, so.
That's right.
Mr. Chairman, You suggested we send the things to the mayor. Is there any way that we can be copied on it so that we can all stay in the loop?
Yeah, I'd like for you to, if you have any questions or comments, bring it to me. I'll assemble it and distribute it. I think that's the
Fair enough.
easiest way to make sure that everybody's, in the loop.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other comments before we put this one to bed? Go ahead.
Need to, I'm sorry, if we make one, we need to have all. Thank you.
I work for Mr. Neesmith when he has events, okay? He checks the decimal levels through the night. Also, he pulls the plug at 11 o'clock. I mean, there is no loud music, there's nothing at 11 o'clock. And they have to be cleared out of his area by 12 a.m., no later. And I mean, is there any way that they could put time limits on how late you can stay? I mean, because, you know, everybody wants to have a good time, but everybody needs to be respectful.
Amen.
So, I mean, I'm just saying, in his stance, since he isn't here, that's how he does business.
Good idea.
So, I don't know if that would help.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Thank you, Chairman Richardson. That's a lot to chew on, and we'll see if we can't get that going. We'll now move to our Rules Review Committee. Chairman Hahn, you are recognized.
Call this committee to order. Anyone have any comments that they'd like to make at this time?
I just got a real quick. As I mentioned, Muni Code. We really need a way for us to be able to look up resolutions, be able to look up ordinances. And I have emailed y'all, not all of y'all, because a lot of y'all are new. I have offered to even help for free last year or year before last, one of the two, to help compile that on my own time. But when it's, like for instance, when I had to look up the dog ordinance over some issues, the dangerous dog ordinance, if y'all recall, I had to make a records request. I had to submit that form. I had to wait on them to get it. If it's on Municode, I can just make a few clicks and it's right there. It's like, especially with this noise ordinance, people aren't going to be able to access it without a records request. We need to be able to see things. And all the resolutions need to be publicly accessible. You can make a link on your website, Municode, City of Morristown has it. It's got everything. Everything is categorized. It's a really great resource. I just request that y'all would consider that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to speak?
Time you have given and what looks to be true consideration and examination of the noise ordinance. That is truly a very important issue. It started with one item, and now it's reaching out into numerous areas. So be careful when you do it, as you should be with anything, such as your rules. There's nothing that I saw online about this Rules Committee. It says, again, discussion and consideration. Last time, 4 rules or proposals were brought out. What I would like you to consider is 2 items, whether tonight or preferably next month when people know what's going on, or perhaps an article can be written about what's coming up. Nobody that I know of has complained about your public comments or how you do them. I have heard nobody say, let's get rid of agenda comments. I've heard nobody say, let's get rid of public hearings when we have them on zoning. I've heard nobody say, unless it's being said quietly between commissioners, let's get rid of public comments at the end of our meetings. I don't want to wake up one day, and I won't because I do pay attention, but I don't want to see headlines, commission votes 9 to 5 to get rid of general public comments, or to combine them with other comments, which effectively cuts them in half. If I could speak on agenda for 3 and non-agenda for 3, and you combine them and say, I can only speak for 3, I or anyone who wants to speak on agenda and non-agenda their time has been cut in half. I've been coming here a long time. Your comments at the end of the meeting, there might be 4, 5 people at the most, generally. There have been more, there have been less. Let's say there are 5. That's 15 minutes of your time. I heard somebody down at the city council, before you read the headlines, that the council removed public comment, general public comments from their regular agenda. Now they're planning, and I will assume they will at some point. They're going to move them over into a work session in another room. That's not the dignity that should be accorded to public comments.
Amen.
And what was funny, a lady made just a beautiful comment. She said, when you came to my door asking for my vote, I never told you, your 3 minutes are up. So bear that in mind. Endure. If you don't like the commenter or you don't like the comment, just endure it and let it go. But I ask that you leave your public comments alone, and I ask that you leave the 10-day rule in effect with 9 days. If there's a holiday and you don't meet on Monday, it becomes if you want to call it a 9-day rule. But you need to look at contracts. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak?
Could that be me?
Because some of the things you do, some of the things the mayor does, they're not right. But you won't listen, and you won't do your own research so that you don't end up with things that are wrong on your agenda to be voted on. And I'm sorry that I feel that I am angry, but I will readily admit it. I've never been more disturbed by the county commission than I am tonight. And that's saying a lot, because I've seen a lot go on. And you talk about the First Amendment, and this isn't about the First Amendment. No, it isn't. But what did you all do when it was the First Amendment? Many of you voted to sue people who were exercising their First Amendment rights. What did you do? We're talking about passing these guidelines that talk about no placard. What did you do when there was what you called a placard? You voted to sue people. It was in a committee, yes.
Your time is up, Ms.
Take this
Noe.
off the agenda. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the committee at this time?
When you get done with your meeting minutes, I'd love the opportunity to speak if I could,
I'll handle
please.
that.
Gwen Holden, 8150 West Point Drive. Don't care to give you my name, don't care to give you my address. Because I tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You know, God's watching you tonight, and He's watching me. I may not supposed to bring God in, but I am.
Amen.
Because He owns the whole world and everything in it.
Let's get to the agenda, please.
And vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord.
It's not on the agenda. but
And the
thank
people that believe a lie is going to be damned.
Anyone else wishing to address this committee at this time? Seeing none, we will move forward with old business. We have none. New business, we have the review of the regular calendar items with the change on 8F3 from $120,000 to $71,678. Also adding G to that section, 8G, which is to give the mayor permission to continue negotiations on the proposed property for the health department, and to add items 10A, which is to combine public comment sections to being only one item at the start of the meeting. Item 10B, where speakers must state their name and address before speaking at committees. Item 10C, committee meetings, limiting it to 3 minutes per speaker for a total of 15 minutes per committee. And item 10D, which is public comments for the commission meetings, limiting it to 3 minutes per speaker for a total of 30 minutes for comments, with a sign-up sheet available for people to add their names and address to, that will go to the commission chair to evaluate and call them up for their time. And I need a motion for that, please. Motion. Mr. Tim Horner, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Bob Holmes, second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Yes, and Thomas.
Discussion for any item? Hearing none, call for the vote. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Ms. Hal votes no. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 1. 9 to 1. And then we have review of the consent calendar items. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Horner. Second?
Second.
No. Any discussion? All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, motion carries. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Chairman Doty of the County Rules. And, yeah, before we leave, let's take a few minutes. Commissioner Green, you would like to speak?
You told me several meetings back you would discuss this and tell me where this came from, and I was just curious tonight if you'd give me that explanation, sir.
Those rules were compiled through commissioners talking to me. I wrote those, if that's what you're asking. I actually wrote those, but they came from the body contacting me. And also there actually like 31 rules that Charlie Curtis had sent us as guidelines, and I put them on your desk. Again, that was in November, and I think you were absent that month in our committee meetings, and therefore I think you missed something that day, and I didn't realize until you and I were talking the other day. I realized there was something missing in the conversation. You weren't here. Neither was Linda that night.
Yeah, but I asked you in an email, sir, and you told me you wrote me off, told me we discussed it.
I did what?
I asked you in an email, and you told me we discussed it.
I wrote you off? What?
You wrote me off when I emailed you to ask you when and where.
And I
You
just-
wrote me off till we were gonna discuss it, and I never had heard an explanation,
Okay,
sir.
all right, there we are. Yes, Chairman Horner.
That was the last that Mr. Neesmith made us from Jefferson County.
That's right, we've had that. You know, folks, I'll take a moment. There's nothing to get excited about. We're talking about it. We're moving forward, we're discussing. And this is a majority rule kind of situation, and if the body does, it's like Commissioner Harville had a great idea there. And maybe that's what we do, 2A, 2B. I didn't have a problem. You know what I'm saying? It's a thought process. We brought it out of committee, now it goes to commission, and we can amend, we can discuss, we can move it around, we can delay. We all have a vote to do this. But to sit here and think that we're doing this behind anybody is wrong. We've asked everybody to submit rules. And these rules were brought tonight for discussion and consideration, and this is what came out. Chairman Hahn of the Rules Committee has stated that's where he wanted to go. That's where we went, and this for discussion. But to even suggest that we're trying to, this all public information, what we will be voting on. We've got 10 days till our next meeting. There we go. That's what I got to say about it. Are we clear? Adjourn. Yeah, please leave your notebook.